Hello, friends. We're daring to go live again, fully live, that is, not pre-recorded, with today's chat discussion about current events in context of the original principle. Hello, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Manning, doing our best to try and get onto a schedule where we can actually broadcast this 7 p.m. Irish time each Sunday. So you can make a note for that next week, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain that going forwards. But we're still officially in Sunday here, and hopefully as we go along, a few of you will join us. And obviously these will stay up. Excuse me, I've got lights going on in the background. Oh, actually, it's okay. You can leave that on, guys. Yeah, you can leave it on. You can leave it on. That's fine. Sorry, guys. And hello, Nobby. I see you're there already, my good friend. Yeah, well done, buddy. Nothing better to do than wait for your good friend to come online. All right, friends. So Stephen T. Manning from Integrity Ireland. Truth Matters, S.O.S. It's supposed to stand for Stephen on Sunday, but it's an ongoing running joke. Manning on Monday, Truth on Tuesday, Wisdom on Wednesday, and whatever, you know. But anyway, we'll do our best to keep this to Sunday. So as you can see today, the title is Sacrificing the Children, but to whom and why? The systemic battle for the minds and souls of humanity. The reason we stray onto these topics, friends, is because they're absolutely fundamentally important to understanding how and why the world is going through the throes of disruption and violence and war and everything. And of course, these serial attacks on our children. So I want to open up with slide number 1, which very simply is, if you look at the top right, you see the logo for the original principle. Very roughly, this corresponds. It's a numerical and color related logo that aligns with the properties of light itself, with nature, with science, with human history, and shows us, especially when it comes to human history, where we are either in or out of alignment with this original principle. Here we are, try and get this closer. Great. So here we have a figurative model of the original male and the original female, okay? Yes, I'm one of those people that insists that there are, in effect, only 2 genders, male and female, and there is a form of perfection for both. The first bit of bad news, I'm sorry to say, is that hardly any of us alive today can claim to be representative of true masculine or feminine individuality, let alone sexuality, okay? And there's a reason for this, which we'll cover as we go through the broadcast here tonight. But I want you to look at this notion. Now, I repeat this almost every week, so I don't want to be boring those of you that know this off by heart already. But very simply, if you can just root in your mind the notion of spirit, mind, and body, that we are beings that are comprised of 3 overlapping but discrete areas of operation, okay? And they correspond accordingly to concept, plan, and action, okay? So the spirit is the chakra at the top there, you see. This represents the chakra system as well. But the spirit is our connecting point with the divine, if you like. And usually people have to be in a trance, or be religious mystics have to have gone out into the wilderness for 40 days and all that before they can access this realm, if you like. It may happen in your deep subconscious as well. Then the next area is the mind, or the plan. So if you decide to do something, there's a concept, then you make a plan, and then you take the action. So this is a formula that corresponds with spirit, mind, body, concept, plan, and action, and possibly the most important part, with the notion of God, the feminine, and the masculine in that order. For those of you that might be new to this topic, feel free to go on Instagram, I think, where I've got about half a dozen slides up already explaining this original principle concept, how it came about, and where it's going to take us. But I believe that a large part of the answers to the troubles that beset the world and human society today can be answered by an understanding of this original principle. At least the concept part can be answered. After that, then we've got to make plans and then take actions based on that understanding. So I hope I've sort of established this here. Concept, plan, action, spirit, mind, and body, deity, feminine, and masculine in that order. Now, this also corresponds, I'll make this a little bit larger for you. This also corresponds from the bottom to the top to sexuality, psychology, and spirituality, okay? Quite logical, guys. Spirit, mind, body, yeah. The body, the sexual arena, that's the sexual chakra, the root chakra it's called, okay, the red one. And these colors are important too, as you'll see in a few minutes. Then we have the psychology or the mind, the aspect, the feminine aspect, and at top we have spirituality. And over on the right here, I've just make this point as well. So what is this spiritual chakra? What, you know, in day-to-day lives, how do we relate this to, you know, everyday life? Well, this is good or evil authorities, okay? There's a question mark there. Are we listening to truth or lies? Okay, so that defines the concept. I hope you understand this, friends, okay? So whatever concept we have there in our minds before we take actions, before we make plans and take actions, if the concept is based on lies or on false authorities, then we're in trouble. And this is largely the case in today's world, okay? Partly because most of us do not know how to access, but we're learning, but we do not know how to access the original, true God spirit, if you like, the source. I don't care what you might call it, it, him, they, them, or whatever, but to have the notion there that there's something ultimately good, ultimately true, ultimately pure, that we should all be aspiring towards, but something has stopped us from doing this. There in the middle, then, we have the mental, emotional, psychological aspects, right, which relate to the divine, if you remember, okay? Education or social conditioning and indoctrination. This is a question. You know, are we getting true education, or are we just being conditioned to fit into a society that's already somewhat off track? You know, are we receiving indoctrinations in how to align with this this global system, which I describe often as diabolical for very evident reasons? But ultimately, the first one equals the second, which then in turn equals manifest reality, or in other words, the outcome is a consequence of the concept and the plan, and then the outcome, okay? Concept, plan, and action equates to that, okay? It's Sunday night, so it's Danny's ice cream night. If you can hear strange tinkling noises in the background, wrong word, not tinkling, I mean tinkling with a spoon on a plate. That's my son, Danny, enjoying his ice cream. Isn't that right, Danny?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Danny. Everybody's happy to hear from you. Okay, good lad, Danny. So now let's have a look at some of the, you know, to refer back to the title, you know, sacrificing the children. What am I talking about? Surely I can't be talking about literal child sacrifice. Well, maybe I am, and maybe I should be. But let's start here. This is just a couple of quotes off the internet, you know. The impact of porn on young minds. Now, the point is being made here, of course, that if young, uninformed or poorly formed minds, impressionable minds, are exposed to what would otherwise be shocking sexual scenes, it can literally do damage. This is why people, those sad people who have suffered, especially sexual abuse as children, can become very, very disturbed adults, and can actually often continue the same horrors that were visited on them in the first place. So there's a reasoning, there's a logic behind all this, guys, if you bear with me, all right? We're leading to a couple of very salient points. So then below, it says Lady Gaga is poisoning children's minds. I think I put in the search as, you know, sexual ideology poisoning children's minds or something. And these are some of the answers that came up. Now, there's Lady Gaga over there on the right, in about the only picture that had any relation to sexual impropriety, if you like, that was decent enough to put up, you know, otherwise we get banned. Bottom left is a not so wonderful looking Bambi thug who, if you remember, was the Irish Eurovision Song Contest entry last year, along with demonic curses and witchcraft and, you know, just gender. I mean, people don't refer to Miss Thug or what, I don't even know what to call her. They don't know how to refer to her. It's an it, or as she, they, them, and all of this nonsense. And I'd like to make a comment here on this, actually. We went from was it only about 6 months ago or a year ago, we were being told by the mainstream media and by the so-called authorities, who I keep on insisting that the larger and higher they are, the higher you go, the more likely they are to be sociopaths and psychopaths who are, whether they are doing it consciously or not, in the employ, if you like, of the satanic archetype. And this is what a lot of this is about. So here we have Miss or Bambi Thug, who I did a whole video on at the time. If you're interested, go and look for it. If you can't find it anywhere else, you'll find it under Rumble, probably under my name, or Integrity Ireland, or Truth Matters, or something like that, okay? But we made a big point of it, not just Bambi Thug and her Satan-worshipping, missive from the land of saints and scholars, Ireland, but also there in the middle, then we have the Olympic Committee paves the way for trans athletes. Now, those of you that saw the Olympic opening ceremony, I'm not going to go over it all again, but it was bizarre. There was a lot of symbolism right out of the book of Revelation, including the pale horse and, the rainbow colors. And there was a lot of direct and indirect references to apocalyptic scripture, let's call it. And again, ask yourself, those of us that are old enough to remember growing up in a world where it was relatively clear the difference between a boy and a girl, or a man and a woman, and what our various roles were. Now, this is not to discount the reality and it's not a possibility, the reality that many people are definitely psychologically and emotionally confused as to, let's call it, their sexual, what's the right word for it? Attractions, let's put it that way. That's a fact. It's also a fact, because I've actually met a couple of people like this, that there are people that are known as hermaphrodites, who are actually physically born with, let's just call them both male and female, bits, right? And you end up scratching your head and going, well, surely they have a right to express themselves as they are, And part of the argument today is to say, well, hold on a minute. Somebody just wanting to do something just because they feel like it is surely not justification enough for the whole of society to have to change their ways to accommodate them, okay? Ideally, we're looking for the best in people. And even as you run a race and, let's say I decide to enter the 400 meters at my age, okay? Now, maybe when I was in my 20s, I might have had a good chance of keeping up. It might have even won the occasional race, but not against trained athletes. But I enter the race and I come dead last because I'm basically too old and unfit to compete with proper trained athletes. And I demand my absolute fundamental rights to get a gold medal, whether they like it or not. Now, it's one thing doing it in the Special Olympics, where everybody, I believe, gets an award of some sort for competing. But that's because it's understood that it's the competing that is the actual winning. That's the achievement, and it's not necessarily the actual coming first in the race. It's the fact that you've competed. So they get their own rewards. But this here, the award, sorry. But here, when we're talking about me, so I demand, well, look, I have an absolute right. It doesn't matter if I'm too old, too unfit, or even too lazy to train properly. I've come here and I demand my right to get a medal. Well, that's just ludicrous. So we changed the whole of the sporting construct and the whole of the notion of competitiveness, good, natural, wholesome competitiveness to bring out the best. Let's see how fast we can go. Let's see how many goals we can score. Let's see how high we can jump, whatever it might be, that gives joy to other human beings going, oh my Lord, you man just climbed Everest. Maybe I'll do that one day. It creates this desire within us. I would argue this divinely inspired desire to be the best we possibly could be. Not by me insisting, just because I've got enough power and money, let's say, insisting that nobody else in the world is allowed to climb a mountain because it'll make me feel offended, let alone inventing laws that are going to allow me then to charge people with offenses because I've taken offense at something that they've said or done, whether it's innocent or not. The world is going crazy, but there's a reason for it, friends. Once you understand the reason, you can then start to think of the concept of how we start to address this. And finally, there on the right-hand side, who's that? Concho or something? I've forgotten what his name was. Was it a him or a her? Well, I presume it's a him. It's got a beard, but was also wearing a dress and saying, and it's the fact that these ideas are, being Conchita, isn't it? That's right. These ideas are being thrust upon us through the mainstream media, at the Olympics, at the Eurovision Song Contest, in popular culture. These very highly paid and influential singers and celebrities and so on and so forth, not to mention the political world, the United Nations, the World Health Organization. All of these so-called authorities that I keep saying are largely sociopaths and psychopaths, wolves in sheep's clothing, leading us down the wrong track for a particular reason. Maybe some of them don't even realize they're in the employ of the dark one, but that's in effect what's happening. So there we are. I'm saying now, children being exposed to this sort of stuff, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's pretty fair to say. And I know there'll be people with liberal mindsets out there probably saying, well, hold on a minute, we have to be kind to everyone. I'm not saying be unkind to people. What I'm saying is that, we have to counter when figures like this come on the world stage and try to force the rest of us to comply with what I would regard as their inadequacies or their failures to live up to the model of perfection of masculine and feminine, which all of us fall somewhat short of. But when they try to then you have to come back hard at them and point out the illness that they're suffering from, is so that we don't all get infected. So, but why would they do this with our children? Well, here we go. Let's have a look at the next one. Here we are now. This is inclusive sexual health education for lesbian, gay, bisexuals, transgender, queer, and questioning. Oh, so now there's a gender form called questioning. You ask questions, right? These youth need and deserve to learn in settings that are inclusive of their experiences and that give them the education necessary to stay safe and healthy. Really, why? Why do they need and deserve to learn in settings that are inclusive of their experiences? Yeah, that's what life's all about. Life is a journey of exploration and learning. And what happens is, when I first joined school and went to school and found out that I was one of the smallest boys in the school, let's say, well, I had to learn that, I had to realize that in the pecking order of the school bullies or the school sportsmen, I came somewhere down the bottom end of that scale. And then you learn to live with it and you adapt and you adjust. You can't say, well, I insist on being the captain of the football team just because I feel like it. It's ludicrous. It's nonsense. And it's a form of insanity that the great bulk of humanity has been going along with it. But it's understandable insanity because we've been trained and conditioned to defer to the authorities in almost all aspects of our lives, instead of reverting to our own sovereign authority that's connected to the divine through the spirit, the concept, the plan, the action. Okay, here we are. I almost dare not say it. DIY sex education for gay men, learning the hard way, literally. Ha ha ha! Very funny. Yeah. Gay men going deeper, all of this innuendo and all the rest of it. But you see, this is the stuff. And then there's that series of gay books, and not just gay books, but these books that are written by authors with an agenda to press. They've been funded by certain individuals, and then the politicians and the bureaucrats and the administrators that work for them have all been kidnapped and coerced into enforcing these ideologies. And if we remember the good work that Andy Heisman and his friends were doing, traveling around Ireland in a boat and going into libraries and basically using the law as best they could to explain to the librarians that what they were doing was committing a criminal offense by leaving these materials available for children as young as 12 to be exposed to. So I hope I've made the point here, guys. There's a thrust to try and interfere, to try and sort of lower the age of consent. The whole Epstein file things, which has just exploded again in the media. Apparently there are no Epstein client lists. Well, really? So what's Ghislaine Maxwell doing in jail for then? What's she in jail for? If there are no lists, if there's no proofs. And there's something very sinister going on here, guys. Again, we don't have time to cover that in any sort of depth this evening. But when powerful elites, such as Prince Andrew, for example, who we now know lied and schemed his way out of proofs that he was engaged in improper sexual activity under the while he was being hosted by Jeffrey Epstein and co. and all of the lies that came out and all the rest. Well, obviously, people like him and as powerful and as rich as influential as him seem to be able to control the mechanisms of governments all around the world, do they not? I'm not saying him in particular because he did get somewhat exposed, but there are people superior to him. And by superior, perhaps I should say subterior, if there's such a thing as that, you know. In other words, morally speaking and everything, they're far lower on that scale. But they have the power, they have the money, so that they can make these things happen. So the official record now is that Jeffrey Epstein, who was a notorious pedophile, basically just killed himself. He was depressed. The minute of footage that went missing from his prison files, oh, well, you know, what can we do about that? And oh, it's just a conspiracy theorist that he was blackmailing people and everything. No. There's a lot more to be seen here than meets the eye. We're still waiting to hear about the Kennedy assassination, aren't we? How long is it going to take? Because I do believe Trump is probably doing his best. Probably. I hope he is anyway. But the system itself, you see, is bigger than any individual. And the system has been constructed over decades and centuries to protect the system. That's part of the problem we have. Okay, guys, now I know we've got a certain amount of slides today. And just to hit home the point, here's a chart on the left. These are the people cheering when Ireland put through its abortion laws, the 36th Amendment to the Constitution. On the left-hand side are charts indicating the rise of sexually transmitted diseases. All right, I don't have a lot more information on that, but basically it's on the incline. You know, the numbers are getting worse and worse. And the argument I want to put here is just a simple question. Well, why? Why are women demanding abortions? Why are sexually transmitted diseases on the rise? And a simple answer for that is because of licentiousness, sexual licentiousness, and promiscuity. People want to be able to use and abuse their own bodies at will, regardless of the consequences of the diseases they might catch. They want to do it, you know, my choice, my body, all that sort of stuff. And even if it means having to murder the child that you would otherwise give birth to, well, you know what? That's the cost of a brandy and port, isn't it? You know what I mean? I had an extra shot, you know, I took the lad home and oops, oh, well, you know. And then we hear, I think, let's see what comes next. Yes, here's Higgins, bottom right. So the 36th Amendment was signed into law. Now, I know it was a few years ago, 2018 and all the rest of it. But interestingly, it was 66% of the population, according to the polls, that voted this in. Now, I just want you to look because, again, I keep hammering home this concept that there is a satanic archetype and there is a deity or a godly, not more than an archetype, but there are these two concepts. And one of them absolutely belongs in this world, the godly concept. The satanic concept or the evil archetype does not belong in human society, but it manifests in symbolism all the time in events like this. Now, these are facts, guys. First of all, it was the 36th Amendment of the Irish Constitution. Coincidence, perhaps, but that's 6 sixes. All right, 6 times 6 is one of those numbers that jumps out at me. I do my studies in symbolism often as well, you know. On the first year that abortions were legalized, which was 2019, all right, which happens to also have been the launch of the COVID pandemic. And I've done other videos about that, guys. There are so many 666 symbolism connections to the breakout of the COVID. It is almost unbelievable. I would say, I think I've identified somewhere in the region of about 18 of them, interestingly, 3 6s or 18, but about 18 of these symbolic connections to the patents, to the injections, the money being paid, and then the fact that 6,666 babies were aborted in the first year of legal abortions in Ireland. There's the official figures, guys. You tell me there isn't something strange and occultic or satanic going on here with the capture of Ireland, on top of all the other things that are going on, okay? That there's something horrible going on. And what's his name? Higgins signs it in. Anyway, 36th Amendment, that's the exact number of abortions in the same year that COVID kicked off. I think we need to be paying attention, guys. I know most of us dismiss the spiritual notion quite logically, as sort of a vague, indecipherable, nondescript concept that, yeah. But that's the reason that it is so vague and indecipherable and nebulous, is precisely because we have been isolated and separated from it. And that's what a lot of this is doing here. They're trying to maintain that separation from the divine. That's why we don't have a profound understanding of what it means to be spiritual or spiritually connected. But we should be aspiring to that. Just like a sick person would aspire to good health, you could say, oh, what's it like to run 400 meters in under a minute or something? They'll say, well, I don't know because I've never actually achieved it. But that's why I'm in training now and I'm taking healthy food and I'm doing, because in 2 or 3 years' time, I hope to have that experience and then be able to explain to other people why they should try and do it as well, type of thing. I hope that makes some sense, guys. There are some comments coming up over there, guys. Thank you. Please, I won't distract myself answering your comments now. I'll go back into them when I see them on the various platforms. This is going to live to YouTube, to Facebook, and maybe even to X. I'm not quite sure, though. I have a feeling it doesn't appear on X because I haven't got the right subscription, but we'll sort that out. So anyway, so what are we talking about? So all of these sixes and the babies being aborted and the 36th Amendment, what could possibly be going on? Now, this is a shocking concept, my friends, but I'm suggesting that it is, in fact, or it was, in fact, an act of mass child sacrifice. Now, as people might just throw their hands up in the air and say, oh, what blithering nonsense. No, guys, it's not. This is the god Moloch, one of the names of many of the pagan gods, which are mentioned in the Bible, actually. You know, God gives instructions to the Israelites, do not sacrifice your children. Apparently it was quite common also in the Celtic culture, believe it or not, guys. In ancient Ireland, apparently it was one of the practices of the pagan religion here. But again, the point is being made. Then in 2021, and I missed this at the time because if you recall, my wife got very seriously ill and passed away shortly afterwards. But it hit me the other day when I heard about this. I stumbled across a discussion in the Dáil. And I'll read this. Irish politicians vote for maximum pain for aborted babies. Now, the headline is a bit dramatic because it's from the Catholic Arena website, okay? December 2021, in a sick and sadistic development, Irish politicians, including many from Sinn Féin, openly mocked the idea of administering pain relief to babies as they were being killed in the act of abortion. It's not there, but, you know. All right, now, a couple of horrible things. We're not going to go into awful detail here. I just want to ask you a simple question. Do you think it's okay to murder babies? Right? Now, this is where we see the separation between the sheep and the wolves, all right? Between the sociopaths and the empaths, you know, between those who care and those who couldn't care less, okay? I can't fathom how anybody could knowingly murder what is, in effect, a baby, an unborn baby. We also now have full-term abortions. Now, I must check this out. I had a quick look earlier. Certainly, they're available in America in certain states. Where else, I'm not quite sure. But the idea, they call it an abortion, but what they do, a partial breech abortion, where the baby is basically allowed to come partly out. You know, the head comes out of the vagina. And then the spinal cord is severed, or a scissors is stuck into its skull and scrambled its brains. Guys, this is horrific. I just don't get it. You know, I really don't get it. I mean, we put animals down in a far more humane way. People are arguing and complaining about the Muslim practice of halal slaughter, saying it's not humane enough. And they're doing this stuff to our babies. And all for what? For convenience, for promiscuous women in particular, for promiscuous women who can't control themselves, who have no sense of discipline and no sense of awareness of the awful moral tragedy that they're involved in, okay? And everyone that voted for the abortion referendum in 2018, 66% of you, apparently, according to the figures. Interesting, isn't it? 66% of you vote. The first year, 6,666 babies are aborted, and it's called the 36th Amendment. Well, you know what? Some of it could be coincidence, but not all of it is. As Carl Gustav Jung said many times, the more that coincidences appear, the less they are coincidences. All right, there's a reason behind it. And I believe, and I think it's time to start saying this out loud now, that there are demonic forces at work orchestrating pulling the strings of everybody around the world. And we're heading into, I think, the Battle of Armageddon, whatever form or shape it's going to take, is going to happen either at some point between now and 2030, because that's the 2000th anniversary of the start of Christ's mission. If you're the so-called Antichrist or the bad guys or diabolicals, that's the date you're going to choose to try and finally capture the world for the Luciferians, the Satanists, the diabolical worshippers, and so on and so forth. Anyway, remember, I said it first, but the symbolism holds all of it up, guys. So here we are, this little slide. So where do we draw the line? I alluded to this earlier. I want to run 400 meters, but I'm just not fit enough or strong enough or disciplined enough to do it. But I insist I get a medal. I want a medal. You have to do it because it's my body, my choice. Well, there we are on the right. You have a thug. He is saying my body, my choice. Again, the text ran over, my apologies. I put him in there as a thug saying, okay, so what do we do if criminals get themselves organized? And they say, we're not happy about the fact that you keep putting us in jail every time we punch someone in the face. And of course, the bulk of society will say, well, we don't really want you going around punching people in the face. That's why we're putting you in jail. They say, well, hold on a minute. What about our fundamental rights? I can't help myself. It's how I feel. It's what I want. I had a few drinks, and instead of taking some girl back to her dorm and making her pregnant so she can have an abortion, I went down the street and punched someone in the face. Where's my rights to do what I bloody well want anytime I want? So we have to have, and never mind the law, guys. Human law is a parody. It's a distant, diabolical parody of the original principle, right? Because if we were living under the original principle, we wouldn't need written laws because we'd be connected directly to the source, and our conscience would be our guide. Our conscience would say, oh, no. And you just wouldn't be able to act against it. No more than a decent person could hurt a child or even commit an abortion or whatever like that. You wouldn't be able to do it because it would just run against the grain. Okay. But so here we have the original principle. Now, what I'm suggesting is that if you understand that original principle well enough, you start to understand original moral law. And from that standpoint, it's far easier to assess and investigate these difficult moral choices. Like, does a woman have a right? Is it her body that we should be thinking about, or is it the child's body that we should be thinking about? Or even to go further back, is it the woman's behavior that needs to be penalized? Instead of offering all these solutions for quick and easy overnight abortions and all this sort of stuff and whatever, how about educating young women to treasure their private precious parts to such an extent that they treat them with the respect they deserve? And then they don't have these awful tragedies and dramas unfolding because they got drunk one night, or maybe not even drunk, and ended up getting pregnant. And now they want a solution. There has to be some responsibility here, guys. And so what do everybody do? Oh, we'll turn to the authorities, who? The diabolical authorities, to invent laws to facilitate us committing offenses against the original principle. That's the satanic mindset. Hope you're with me still, guys. All right, so here we go. Let's see if we can lighten it up a wee bit. Oops, not so much. All right, so the point I'm just making here, you've probably seen slides of this before, pollution, war, injustice and poverty, for example, So who gets to choose? Yeah. Who gets to choose what injustices we suffer, and who gets to choose who lives in poverty and who doesn't? Who gets to choose who gets bombs rained down on them and who doesn't? Who gets to choose which industries we fund, even though they're poisoning the planet, and so on and so forth? And no, we're not drifting into other agendas here today, guys. Well, here's the answer. Here's who gets to choose. It's the highest percentage of sociopaths and psychopaths, top left. Yeah. These are the diabolical constructs that have replaced the original principle. The original principle, top right there, spirit, mind, and body, concept, plan, and action, deity, feminine, masculine, in that order. That's how we're supposed to be aligned. But human institutions, especially large ones, governments, empires, large corporations, it's been scientifically proven that the highest percentage of sociopaths and psychopaths, now this is people who don't care about other people, right? Why? Because the spirit of the divine is completely missing. Their consciences are, they might as well not have them there at all, right? They're only focused on things like power, prestige, profit, possessions, you know. So we have here, so in this is an upside down model, if you like, where the concept is bad to begin with, over on the right hand side. The concept is bad. As a consequence, the plans are poisoned because the plans have to respond to the concept. And finally, the actions produce an outcome, which is invariably wicked, evil, wrong, destructive. And the main thing, you can come back to this and freeze it, guys, and read it, you know, with a little bit of time on your hands. But the main thing to remember when you go to work on Monday, yeah, and you ask yourself, oh yes, if I was asked to do something which I thought was morally wrong, and it can be anything, guys, anything at all, but if your conscience went, oh, hold on, Stephen, that seems a bit dishonest. Oh, but the boss told me to do it, and I'm just following orders. That's the moment you take another step towards hell. Institutions, corporations, and governments do not have consciences. Individual people do. Well, some more or less than others, you know, depending on how much you've nurtured and trained it, or how much you've denied and suppressed it, okay? And as someone said recently, and I've repeated many times before, psychopaths are born, you know, the serial killers that go, whatever, but sociopaths are made. And if you get a child or a young person or a worker early enough and day in, day out, keep asking them to do things against their conscience, eventually the conscience gives up and dies. You know, then you have a full-blown sociopath or psychopath on your hands who's capable of becoming another world leader. Please spend some time looking at this, guys. We'll come back to it. And you can come back to it later. Okay. So, oh yes, this is just re-emphasizing. Believe it or not, this diagram came out of a book that I wrote called The Color of Truth 27, 28 years ago. I thought I was going to take the world by storm and everything, but it's the beginnings of my understanding of the symbolism that can direct us to either good or evil. Again, freeze this and have a look at it. It was comparing psychology with the factual realities, you know. So here on the left-hand side, you start at the bottom with the material world, which equates to the action of the masculine, right? Then you've got the normal consciousness and personal unconscious, which equates to the feminine aspect, you know, the mind. And then you start going up into the realms where God, and there's question mark, the realm of great unknown, yeah? But it's an interesting model to help people understand. But I'm emphasizing the point again here, guys. If you are trying to capture people's minds and souls, you get at their sexuality early enough, job done. I hope we understand that, guys. You get at their sexuality early enough, job done. And also, believe it or not, guys, there's a direct link between sexuality and spirituality, as you'll see in a moment. So we'll move on to the next one. And just to re-emphasize a point, guys, there over on the right is our model, the same model with the question mark here of the original principle, okay? This is a diagram out of one of the science books explaining what an atomic structure looks like. You know, the proton, the neutron, and the electron. There are my diagrams that I did 28 years ago in the book, right? Which is the structure of an atom, top right there. Up and down quarks, you'll see the slide here. They refer to up quarks and down quarks. One makes the proton masculine, if you like, and the other makes the neutron feminine. All right. And they're bounded together by what? The white electron. There you have it again. The white, the red, and the blue, the atomic family, the original principle model of creation. And those of you who have been around long enough will know, here he goes again. Believe it or not, it connects directly in to the properties of light itself. Remember, we're all supposed to be children of light. The Big Bang Theory, or when God said, let there be light, possibly the same thing, where we originated in an explosion of light. And isn't it interesting that our normal range of sight is from deep red at 700 nanometers to deep blue at 400. And these numbers keep repeating in mythology and biblical history with uncanny repetitions, so much so that you realize there's something going on here. There's a pattern that we need to understand. The sign of infinity at the top there, the 8 turned sideways, it's a sign of infinity, and the white. So there you have your white light, deep reds, and deep blues, this triad that reflects the original principle. Let's see what's next. All right. So now we drift briefly, and I do mean only briefly, into the story of the fall, because I'm just going to say it straight out, guys. I did a lot of studies in psychology and the psychology of religion, world religions. I was in a seminary for a while. I was also a pastor up in Alaska in a family church for a while. But then from my mind, I moved on as I understood that religion cannot possibly be the answer. At best, it points to the answer. At best. Sometimes it's far worse than that. But the story of the fall, spirit, mind, and body on the left here, okay, concept, plan, and action, God, Eve, and Adam. Interestingly, the word Adam means red in Hebrew. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, if you look over on the right there they are in the garden, and the story of the serpent tempting them, and Eve took an apple. Well, it's all sexually representative. And the reason this is important, because it relates to the way that children are being attacked with sexual materials today. It's a repeat of the original fall. Adam and Eve were happy in the garden, naked and unashamed. They were told, do not eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Now, what if I were to tell you that the tree of knowledge represents Eve and the tree of life represents Adam? That's why I've got them in blue and red there, all right? Yeah. Do not partake of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Well, what would Eve's fruit possibly be? Well, look at your Hail Marys, friends. Blessed be the fruit of thy womb, and so on and so forth. What if they were being instructed, have fun in the garden, do whatever you want, but don't do the business yet, because they were still immature? As a consequence, they disobeyed and they lost the God aspect, the concept there, all right? And that in turn was replaced by Satan, as you see. Okay, so the dark comes in where previously there had been light. He influences Eve to make Adam complicit in this act of disobedience. And the consequence is that they are evicted from Eden, and she conceives Cain, all right? Cain, the original murderer. Now, bear with me, guys, because this all makes sense. Now, here again, the same idea on the left. Everything was hunky-dory. There's that second slide. Sorry, guys, I've touched the screen. There's the second slide. And finally, you notice that what happens is that the Eve and Adam positions reverse. Now you have the male dominating the female, which is his story, human history. And it's most typified in Cain's act when he murders Abel because he's bigger and stronger than his younger brother. He murders him and starts human history, which is symbolized over there on the right, center right, by the black of Satan and the masculine dominating the feminine, which is really the human story. And what I'm saying is that we've been inching our way out of it over the centuries through messianic missions, through the work of religions, good, decent people. There's a lot been going on, but we're hitting this very interesting point, 2030. This is the realization of the 6,000 biblical years of history. There's your number 6 again, okay? 4,000 years from Adam to Jesus. I know it's not literal, but it's in there. It's symbolic. 4,000 years between Adam and Jesus. Jesus called himself the second Adam, dressed in red and white. Adam means red, so on and so forth. I could go on over this for hours, those of you that know me. And his 2,000-year anniversary of the start of his public mission is in 2030, the same date they've picked for the Great Reset. Something is going to happen, guys. Sharpen your gardening tools for 2030, because it's going to be, I think it's going to be the beginning possibly of that 7,000th biblical period. This the number 7, which is the number of completion, which we showed you earlier, associated with the masculine and the red and so on, okay? I think that now it could be shortened, could be just 10 years, could be 10 weeks, I don't know, could be 1,000 years. But the trigger point is going to be 2030. That's why they're putting so much effort. The diabolicals are putting so much effort into getting their way before that date manifests. So as you can see, the 666, the diabolical satanic elements, again, the symbolism there on the bottom right. But this is human history. If you understand that and you go, oh my God, hold on a minute. Yeah, if there's such a thing as a good masculine and a bad masculine, what would it look like? And you'd say, well, the good masculine, arguably, right? The good masculine would be in alignment with his superior feminine properties, you know, the maternal compassion, all these things that direct how I use my energies. In turn, those feminine properties, my mind, would be connected to the spirit of the divine. So everything would move in harmony. Yeah, we'd be directed by the divine, not controlled now, because that's how the fall happened. Directed, we've willingly followed the direction, and we manifest love in abundance that returns to the creator. That's the notion, that's the theory, okay? The satanic element comes in and says, nah, don't listen to him, he's tricking you. And they fell for it because they were immature. And as a result, they're separated from the deity, from God, and that's been the story. Human history is the story of us separated from the divine. That's why we have religions. After all, we're trying to reconnect with the divine. And science, arguably, true science, is an attempt to recover knowledge we would intuitively have had. And then, because the dark masculine, which is personified in Cain, why? Because he's a violent murderer. He suppresses his younger, gentler brother, Abel, right? Who was in the feminine position at that time, okay? Because the masculine has to be restored first. And he then goes off, very interestingly, and sets up the first known cities in the land of Nod, and develops things that we all live with today, like taxation and government and armies. Where? In Iran, of all places. I hope you find that interesting, okay? Symbolism is all very intriguing and leads right through to today and the Israeli-Arab conflict out there, okay? Sorry, guys, the text has jumped about here. So we now move into the last few slides. This was a petition that was brought to my attention the other day. Apologies for the way the text is aligned. This is the heading of the text. If you want to go and look for it, guys, it's on change.org, okay? And the text says, hold TUSLA accountable for failures in children's care. Those of you who aren't from Ireland, this is the Irish moniker for the so-called child and family care protection system, all right? It's become a monstrous organization for many reasons, guys. The book on the right, Secret Courts, Child Protection or Child Abuse, by a man called Joe Burns. Sadly, he's now passed away. We produced this book for him. Again, very intriguing, very interesting. He came up with some new concepts such as parental alienation, which is now commonplace understood in the courts. But as that point I make there in red, if you have corrupt judges, you've got a corrupt legal system. They are not our authorities, friends, only in as much as we are bound to these diabolical systems, okay? Now, I'll read this to share just quickly so that you know what's going on. TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency of Ireland, has tragically failed the very children it is meant to protect. Numerous reports and personal testimonies have surfaced stating that TUSLA's actions not only failed to uphold the rights of parents, but have also caused irreparable harm by breaking the bonds between parents and children. This breach of trust is a gross violation of the rights of vulnerable families and demands immediate attention and action, etc., etc. I'll let you go on, guys, to read that because I'm conscious of the time here. But I will make the point that I've personally experienced this myself. I know what's going on. Part of the problem is that an institution that was arguably set up for noble, along noble lines at the beginning, to care for children who definitely needed protection. Well, it then started to grow and get bigger and got government funding. All of a sudden, it's an industry. It's a corporation. They've got promotion systems within their own establishment. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, how do we keep this monstrous machine going? Well, the simple answer to that is we need more children. We need more alienated parents. We need more broken families. And frankly, and I can testify this to myself, you know, if they're not there, they'll go and make them. And that's what's been going on. And the government, because TUSLA is part of the government, because their buddies are running it, it was Frances Fitzgerald, who is also the so-called Minister for Justice for a while. She was the head of this agency at one point, you know, which is not a good qualification because she is an absolute classic sociopath. And of course, she's now got a plum job in Europe, I believe, you know. So the issue is this, that there's people lying, and we now find out that social workers were going into the courts and telling blatant lies in order to keep the court cases trundling along, even though by doing so they were wrecking and destroying the lives of the people concerned. This woman was the Minister for Justice at the time, Helen McEntee. Another disgraceful article. Don't be put off, or don't be, convinced by the pink suit and the pleasant smile there. She is a diabolical individual. I've had personal dealings, or rather I'd say she avoided having personal dealings because we were taking on the justice system while she was the head of it. And no, the head of the snake, guys, honestly. And here again, I've put in the pyramid on the right, the CEO, the management, the workers, the outcome. Again, when they're all lying to the public about what the reason that they're actually there for, why they're in government, what they're supposed to be doing. They know what the real outcome is. Therefore, all of their own senior management and bureaucrats have to lie. And in descending order, you might get away with being honest at the very lowest tier, but you'll never get promoted unless you're willing to sell your soul. It's as simple as that, guys. We need to understand that, okay? How are we doing now? About another 4 or 5 slides, guys, and we'll be finished. This was the petition, change.org. And I've got a sort of a cautionary thing to say here, guys. Now, there's a number of these petition websites. I've used a couple myself in the past. I was a bit shocked and disappointed to see them asking people for money. I didn't ask them for any money. I certainly didn't get any money from them. I just want to make people aware, especially the more innocent ones amongst us. When you sign, and there'd be no harm signing this particular petition. And we'll come to what I said in a moment to them afterwards. But it's become a business of picking topics that move people emotionally and psychologically and, and empathetically. And the next thing they're saying is, oh, would you like your petition to reach more people? By chucking in a $5 or a $10 or £100 or whatever it might be, you could reach 10,000. Now, it's all a little bit vague and nondescript, but what they're doing is keeping the money. It's as simple as that. They might use a little of it to press a few more buttons on a keypad somewhere to send it out to other people. But it's become a money-making venture. And because of that, I'm now a bit suspicious of them. The petition itself, though, stands on its own merit. And the text that I read a part of before is there. But there, if you see bottom right, it says change.org. Tell us a bit more why you chose 2. They give you a score, 1 to 5. What do you think of this petition? And it wasn't the petition. What do you think of how we presented this petition or something? I only gave them a 2, and they say, oh, so they got a shock and said, why did you say that? So this is what I said. I said, first, you try to profit, somewhat misleadingly, I might add, by allowing the signer to believe their donation is going to support the issue or cause, which it isn't. Then you harangue the signer to share to others so that you can profit from other trusting souls. This will be on Facebook and the like. I'll either pay or I'll share. Those are the 2 options they give you. And if you look closely, there's a little thing at the bottom saying, no, nothing for now or something. You have to go hunting for it, Personally, and irrespective of whatever noble intentions may have been behind the original setting up of change.org and similar others like Avaz, for example, you too have developed into just another profit-generating, amoral enterprise by riding on the emotions of genuine victims of the system and exploiting their good intentions. Make the required changes to your operating model, please, or you will get no more support from us. And this is me just doing my bit. I know a few people will watch this, will listen to what I'm suggesting, and just raise awareness a little step more. Oh yeah, just be careful of all of these big operations. They start off small and noble and genuine, and then inch by inch, they have to integrate with the system as we know it. And as they integrate deeper and deeper with it, they incrementally lose their souls, their consciences, their modus operandi, and it all becomes about the great lie once again. Yeah, there are answers still, guys. I do cover it in other videos. All right, how are we doing? Another couple more. Oh, yes, this is something I missed last week. It's only about digital ID. I'll just read them straight to you guys. Again, here's the model. Control and power, the satanic model, the masculine dominating the feminine. In some cultures, it's worse than others, but it's still prevalent. Even in Western democracies, women still don't have pay parity and things like that, So it's about digital IDs. Without a digital ID, this is coming in. Now they're trying to force this in. We need to be alert to it. Without a digital ID, you will face significant restrictions on essential services and activities due to mandatory identity verification requirements, often justified under the guise of anti-money laundering, security, or fraud prevention. Here are the negatives. You won't be able to buy or rent a house, as it will be required for ID authentication, the digital ID. Yeah? Opening a bank account or accessing financial services like investments, cryptocurrency exchanges, insurance, or loans will be prohibited without it. Traveling out of the country will require a digital ID, as will accessing legal services, again, under the pretext of anti-money laundering compliance. You won't be able to claim welfare benefits, access healthcare services, or enroll in education programs, including schools or universities. Employment opportunities such as job applications or background checks may be restricted. Public transportation, including buses, trains, or airlines, could mandate digital IDs for booking or boarding. What's the next one? Of course, I can't read the top one, unfortunately, guys, because it's blocked by the little logos that come up here. E-commerce sites will likely require it for access or transactions, particularly for high-value purchases. Voting, whether in person or digitally, could be gated behind it. And again, I've kept asking people, why don't we use smartphones for voting like we do in Eurovision or something, instead of all of this paper stuff? Well, it's because the paper stuff can more easily be corrupted. Setting up utilities like electricity, water, internet, as well as managing subscriptions such as streaming services may require it. Sending or receiving international payments or remittances will likely demand it. Signing legal contracts such as leases or business agreements could be impossible without it. Even accessing public spaces or events like stadiums or government buildings might require a digital ID for security or ticketing purposes. They have this in China already. My daughter Christina just came back. All right, they've got all this in operation. The people there are just wholesale. They're different because they live under these umbrellas of authoritarianism. In essence, a digital ID will become a prerequisite for participating in nearly every aspect of modern society. Digital ID is the hill. There will be no massability for non-consent if it comes in, as you will not be able to escape having to use it for the most basic life requirements. Oh, and thank you to the person who posted this, by the way. This is a non-partisan issue, so please unite over this to stop it. Need I say any more, guys? This is the diabolical urge to want to control humanity and deprive us of our individual divine sovereignty. And I think I've got you in the background there, Danny. I think we've only got 2 more left, guys, I think. Oh, yes, who to listen to. I say this every week, guys. I like to feature at least one person. Here, I like to feature at least one person every week that I believe has got something to say. Eddie Hobbs is quite a well-known person in Ireland. He was often represented in the media. It was usually about financial issues. And then he started to speak out a little bit against the anomalies of the corrupt system. And of course, he got more or less cancelled. But he has his own YouTubes, and I've listened to a few of them. I like the way he puts things. He's got an insight, especially into financial matters. As you see over here on the right, I just added his photograph to that. But apparently, the government has set aside, I believe it's like 42 million building anyway, whatever it is, 42 million. And they're building these houses that are costing $500,000 each exclusively for the, what do we call them? Asylum seekers or whatever. Anyway, the immigrants that have been flooding the country when people like you and I cannot get a house. Finally, that's where you can reach us, guys. We're into the last minute. I'm going to have to end the live stream, but that's the slide where you can blow it now. Just blow it up, reverse back, take a screenshot if you're looking for us. God bless everyone. I hope some of you found this informative, and hopefully 7 o'clock next Sunday evening, Stephen on Sunday, with something worth listening to. God bless everyone, and thank you. Play.